Hi, this is Pastor Jim Driscoll, Christ Lutheran Church with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. Yeah, kind of dressed down and a little casual. I'm getting ready to have some kind of pretty serious surgery. And part of the reason why I've missed basically the entire month of November, which I very much regret. It has been a difficult process. And a lot of what goes into dealing with my situation spends a lot of time and does affect your personality. It could be some sort of depression or trying to cope with all of the new situation and make it through. I do want to thank the congregation of Christ Lutheran Church for their patience. They're being very supportive, and I'm very thankful. I'd like to thank Angelo Parada for his patience. This has been something that I have tried to do in a special style that I hope will generate interest and spark discussion. And Angelo's been very supportive. And I also like to thank my very special lady, Cheryl, who has been enormously supportive in my going through the process of being treated. I want to thank her again very often, tell her how much I love her and appreciate all that she's done for me. I have stage 4 colon and liver cancer. I have been being treated with chemotherapy for about 4 months, 14 biweekly treatments. And this has left me with a lot of muscle loss and neuropathy in my hands and feet. Extreme fatigue has effectively shrunk the tumors, but they still remain, and we are proceeding for the treatment December 4th. I'll be operated on to remove tumors in my liver and to also remove my gallbladder. Not looking forward to this operation, but it seems to be a significant step forward. This will not be the final treatment. There will be further treatment for the tumors on my colon and no doubt further chemo and possibly radiation. As bad as this sounds, it could be far worse, and I'm very thankful for the prayers and encouragement from so many people. Your prayers are very much appreciated, especially in the following couple of weeks. I will try to do more thoughts while I'm recuperating. And that may entail less than desirable settings, but hey, it's good to get to know each other on a closer level. I pray that each of you has a wonderful Advent in the Christmas season and a very happy New Year. And again, Cheryl, thank you for everything, sweetheart. You're wonderful, and I love you. I'm Jim Driscoll, the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, 1302 East Washington Street, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Check us out on the web, christlutheran-newcastle.org. Questions, comments, contact me on the website. For a transcript of today's thought, go to revjamesdriscollmdiv.com. Sunday worship is at 10:30 a.m. All are welcome with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. God bless your day. This is Pastor Jim Driscoll of Christ Lutheran Church with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. Because of my needing to take some time to step back, I wasn't able to comment on a couple of the holidays in November. First, on Veterans Day, I'd like to emphasize all that those who served and committed their life to protecting us. I'd like to include those men and women in public safety who commit putting themselves in harm's way to serve their community. Less than 1% of the population in the United States is serving in the military. That number is becoming less and less. Recently, an Army general estimated that only about 25% of those young men in the United States are physically qualified to serve in the military. It is a commentary on how much our fellow Americans have allowed themselves to be so physically incapable. Too much time sitting in front of a screen, playing video games, causing themselves to be obese and frankly unable to perform many physical activities. Previously, between World War II and the Vietnam War, up to 10% of the population served in the military. And the majority of men were capable of physically serving in the military. I recognize that although young men are still required to file for the draft, that the draft is no longer a consideration. However, a young man who is that physically capable because of his lack of discipline, or physically incapable because of his lack of discipline and how he cares for themselves, should take a very hard look at what he expects to have for his future life. Also like to express my hope that you had a great Thanksgiving Day. I'm a descendant of a couple, John Alden and Priscilla Mullen, who came over on the Mayflower, who survived the first winter where half of the original pilgrims died. So I will say that to trivialize Thanksgiving Day by calling it Turkey Day does really get under my skin. These people, many others who came to America and at very real risk of their lives and gave us the freedoms we enjoy, deserve much more respect. Acting foolish by thinking it's cute, thinking we celebrate turkeys. I don't know, maybe you are a turkey. This is a day to celebrate, be thankful for all that God has done for us. And as Americans, you have a lot to be thankful for. So quit trivializing one of the most profound holidays of the year and realize how much you have to be thankful for to God. I'm Jim Driscoll, pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, 1302 East Washington Street, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Check us out on the web, christlutheran-newcastle.org. Questions, comments, contact me on the website. For a transcript of today's thought, go to revjamesdriscollmdiv.com. Sunday worship is at 10:30 a.m. All are welcome with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. God bless your day. This is Pastor Jim Driscoll of Christ Lutheran Church with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. Since we are on the topic of God from yesterday's discussion on Thanksgiving, I would like to start a discussion for the next few days on the book I've been reading called God is Not Great. It's interesting to me that the pretentious writer of this book presumes to judge God, which anyone who rejects God fails to understand who he really is, can expect to come under God's wrath and judgment. The thing that really gripes me about this guy is that his perspective and frankly his intelligence is about a mile wide and an inch thick. I'm not sure it's even that thick. By today's standards, this man is considered to be very intelligent and accomplished, but I really don't see it. Apparently, most of his notoriety comes from being a journalist. Now, there are many out there who like to cast aspersions on serious Christians, on Christian clergy, and don't have the slightest clue as to what they're really talking about in terms of faith life, Christianity in general, and frankly, most areas of theologies and philosophy. This guy is representative of most people in the culture. Most people in the culture today, even Christians, frankly, too many Christians think that God is supposed to make life simply make life easy, give us what we want, and otherwise leave us alone unless called upon. The arrogance of our current culture is truly stunning. We're so entitled and greedy and focused on ourselves that we have crowded God out of our lives unless, of course, we need Him. And then, if God chooses not to follow the person's agenda, as we see in Christopher Hitchens' case, then, of course, either God's not smart enough to realize that He should be listening to us, because in our insufferable arrogance, we truly believe that we know better than God. It's stunning to think that people could really be that clueless and obnoxious, that the being who creates and sustains everything in creation could possibly need our input about anything. But God truly loves His creation, wants the best for His creation, and wants to hear from those He created. The breakdown comes when we refuse to hear Him. It's rather mind boggling how we expect God to hear us, but we don't think that we should give God the time of day. By the way, this man is a journalist. He's very quick to cast aspersions on everyone else while he works in a vocation that has shown itself to be disreputable over and over again. In a recent Gallup survey, trust in media plunged to a new low of 28% of those surveyed having a great deal or a fair amount of trust in newspapers, television, and radio to report the news fully accurately and fairly. This is down from 31% last year and 40% 5 years ago. And this survey is dated October 2nd, 2025. Among Republicans, only 8% have any confidence in the media. 36% have not very much confidence or none at all. Of 34%, do the math, that's 70% of surveyed don't really believe in media. So as I read this book, as I read this book, I certainly do so with that in mind, and knowing that those many people who selflessly serve in the church in some fashion make a great deal of sacrifice in order to serve their fellow man and God, and do so at sacrifice from their time and resources. I'm Jim Driscoll, the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, 1302 East Washington Street, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Check us out on the web. It's Christ Lutheran Newcastle.org. Questions, comments, contact me on the website. For a transcript of today's thought, go to revjamesdriscollmdiv.com. Sunday worship is at 10:30 a.m. All are welcome with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. God bless your day. This is Pastor Jim Driscoll, Christ Lutheran Church, with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. Not that I'm obsessing over this. Well, okay, I am. When you're hearing this, I expect to be in surgery to have tumors removed from my liver and my gallbladder removed. Feels odd, even weird, just saying that. But if you would be so kind as to say a prayer, and I appreciate your support. This is one reason why I'm dressed down, and probably will be for a few weeks until things kind of shake out. Anyway, I started to talk about a particular notorious atheist. I really do try to give anyone I read benefit of the doubt, and to get something of what they wrote. As far as I remember, the exception maybe two books, and one was Christian. I've always got something that is helpful or educational out of the books that I've read. I'm halfway through this book, and frankly, I haven't seen one credible thing that I would even want to highlight or keep notes of. Most of what this guy writes is just a screed of slapped on comments, lurching from one really wrong comment to another one. He really has no historical perspective. He seems to think that the writing should be the same as a 21st century American. Well, Christopher, people back in first century Israel, first off, didn't speak English. Second off, didn't speak in the same context and manner that we do. You have to understand the culture, Christopher, and apparently you haven't bothered to do anything to investigate what that really means. Obviously, that's where he starts to fail with, and then he goes on from there. As I said, he's a journalist. He seems to take that as a point of pride. I know a lot of very intelligent, very fair minded journalists. He is not one of them. And despite his credential, kind of shows over and over again he's not very bright. He writes in a style that seems to be lecturing to a class of students, and we will accept whatever blather he throws at us. No intellectual effort on his part, and no critical thinking on the part of his students. Simply just believe what I'm telling you. We see this way too often with the intellectual, and I have to say, liberal elite. They expect that poor little serfs just expect what they say. He says they don't rely on solely science and reason. He says that, but then all through his book, he tries to compare religion to science and reason. He loves to make inflammatory statements like religion kills, sort of like your tabloid newspaper that is more about drawing attention, not so much about getting the facts right. His name is Christopher Hitchens. Name of his book is God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. So, kind of to my point, the same religion he's talking about, and not all of it's about Christianity, but Christianity is the religion that has been giving people religion for over 2,000 years, has been giving people food and clothing and shelter when no one else would step up to do that, to give them money, to provide them with some kind of physical and mental health care, and to also to provide an education. Despite what you think, Christopher, the one of the big main missions of the Christian church, going back to the beginning, is to educate. The fact that you deny that just shows again you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe once in a while, Christopher, assuming you were still alive, which you're not, but should have taken more time to listen and shut up. It was copyrighted in 2007, so clearly way behind the times, and he makes statements the time is shown to be clearly wrong. His Wikipedia entry says he was a member of various socialist organizations in his early life, including the Trotskyist International Socialists. Just a bunch of warped persons there. Um, Sort of gives you an idea. It gives you an idea, not sort of. It gives you an idea of just how twisted our little friend can be. He talks about how religion kills, and he seems to miss how secular humanism has been the most destructive and deadly belief system by far in the history of the world. The 20th century was the bloodiest century in the entire history of the world combined. And there was no crusades or no anything Christian in it. It was entirely secular humanism, killing evil people, and that includes as much Americans as anybody else. You can say what you want about Christianity 400 years ago and Latin America, the Crusades. By the way, in 70 years in existence, the Inquisition killed about 80,000 people, not tens of millions. Now, that is certainly tragic, certainly not acceptable. But if I had to take that over the at least tens of millions killed by secular humanists. So if you're taking direction from this guy, you and him are way out of line. He tries to put onto God what Lenin, Trotsky, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, Che Guevara, Castro, all the other tin horn dictators of the world. He thinks awfully highly of himself, but frankly, he seems clueless. He's a graduate of Oxford. I'm pretty sure Oxford isn't exactly touting his being an alumni. I'm Jim Driscoll, pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, 1302 East Washington Street, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Check us out on the web, christlutheran-newcastle.org. Questions, comments, contact me on the website. For a transcript of today's thought, go to revjamesdriscollmdiv.com. Sunday worship is at 10:30 a.m. All are welcome. With the NCTV 45 thought for the day, God bless your day. This is Pastor Jim Driscoll of Christ Lutheran Church with the NCTV 45 thought for the day. We're talking about Christopher Hitchens. He has a bachelor's degree, albeit from Oxford. The bachelor's degrees don't give you the basis of research, genuine sources, a true academic ability to analyze and genuinely understand what you're writing about on a topic that you have little or no familiarity with. You can tell from his writing that it's very superficial, and lacking in any understanding of a time and culture that Christianity has passed through in 2,000 years. He continually tries to deny the existence of Jesus, which is so intellectually dishonest and just wrong that it's almost laughable that somebody published a book around this based on Hitchens' writings. There is no credible historian today that would deny the existence of Jesus. They might dispute exactly how he's portrayed and characterized, but nobody would ever even think to deny the existence that Christ lived when he lived. No one has been written about or studied more than Jesus. The Bible is history's biggest seller by far. With all the actual critical interest in Jesus, it seems to me that genuine research and intellectual effort would expose Jesus' non-existence. Hitchens does not provide a shred of evidence that shows Jesus never existed. He says a lot of things about how this wasn't done or that wasn't done, but it's intellectually dishonest. And frankly, he seems to have very little in the area of intellectual. You cannot try and argue from a point of nullity. Just because you say you don't know something doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It either is or it isn't, but trying to say that it couldn't be because such and such didn't blank and blank and blank, it's simply intellectual nonsense. And he doesn't seem to grasp that. Solipsism, according to Oxford Languages, is the quality of being very self-centered or selfish. It's also the view that self is all we can know that exists. I'm not even sure he's using that word properly, but he seems to be married to it. And if anybody would know about self-centeredness, selfishness, or thinking that they're the only thing in the whole world, a Trotskyite, Stalinist, whatever he was, would certainly know what that would be. And it wouldn't be so you have a guy who kind of likes to throw around stuff that I'm not even sure that it's right. But I think we will proceed from that and go on to the other vacuous thinking and just really incoherent teachings of writings of Hitchens. He died in 2011 at the age of 61. I don't know, I have a hard life, but I sure wouldn't be in his shoes right now. I'm Jim Driscoll, the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, 1302 East Washington Street, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Check us out on the web. It's Christ Lutheran ORG Newcastle, Christ Lutheran Newcastle.org. Questions, comments, contact me on the website. For a transcript of today's thought, go to revjamesdriscollmdiv.com. Sunday worship is 10:30 a.m. All are welcome. With the NCTV 45 thought for the day, God bless your day.